What's up guys, Nuance Bro checking in, and today we're going to be doing not just a response video, but a response video to a response video to my original response video. Now, if you haven't already watched my previous video, then be sure to watch that. But after making that video, Vincent James decided to make a response video. Now, I recommend you watch all the videos involved here so you know I'm not taking anything out of context. But with that said, let's get to the video.
Nuance Bro, who is responding to one of my videos about this exact topic. Within his video he was responding to, I showed a report by ice.gov, which I found on both the DOJ and BOJ's websites. Going over this report in the video, I said that illegal aliens committed over 1,800 homicides within the fiscal year of 2017, which would equal a homicide rate of just over 15 per 100,000, which is about 3 times higher than legal residents. His response to this statement was one that I get quite often. However, it doesn't really prove anything at all.
So there's a few problems here. First of all, this document isn't about illegal aliens like he says it is. If you look at the document, it says criminal aliens. An alien is anyone who is not a US citizen. This includes lawful permanent residents, green card holders, people who are on work visas, student visas, tourist visas, and illegal aliens, etc. A criminal alien is anyone who is an alien, legal or illegal, that commits a crime. You can even see a differentiation in the same document between illegal and criminal aliens. According to the American Immigration Council, 10% of those deported each year are legal permanent residents.
Now, yes, I do understand that criminal aliens is different than illegal aliens, which is the exact reason why I stated this in the video. So, of course, criminal immigrants also include people that do not hold an unlawful status here in this country, but even if we divided that number by 50%, we say 50% margin of error, 2,000 per year would still give you a homicide rate per 100,000 that is 3 times higher the average legal resident. But outside of this, his statement does not prove that these homicides were not committed mostly by criminal aliens that hold an unlawful status here. In fact, I would say that it's likely most of these homicides were committed by illegal aliens and not student or tourist visa holders like he's trying to imply for some weird reason.
So we have a couple of things to unpack here. First of all, notice how he switches from this study over to this study. When he attempts to defend himself and explain that he knows criminal aliens refer to legal immigrants as well, not just illegal ones. But I wasn't criticizing him on that criminal aliens point in that second study. What he didn't show you, and if you watch the original video I made, I actually say this.
That most of the homicides are committed by criminal immigrants who hold an unlawful status here. So I would say it's probably closer to about 3,800.
So I'm glad he mentioned this time that this study doesn't only apply to illegal aliens, but also legal ones. So as you can see, I actually praised Vincent James for mentioning what he did with respect to the criminal aliens in the second study. But my criticism is about the first study, because if you watch the original video, he said this.
This is for the fiscal year of 2017, just 1 year. And if we look at the homicide rate by illegal aliens, we're seeing 1,886. So over 1,800 homicides by illegal aliens in just 1 year. Now ask yourself, how many illegal aliens do they say reside in this country? They say 12 million, right? Well, if we take 1,886 and we divide that by their population of 12 million, we take that calculation and we multiply it by 100,000, you get a per 100,000 homicide rate by illegal aliens of about 15.7.
You can very clearly see he refers to the homicide rate by illegal aliens, over 1,800 homicides by illegal aliens. So either Vincent James was purposefully lying when he made the video, or he didn't know this fact. Now, I like to try and assume the best in people if I can, so I'll assume he didn't actually know what the ICE ERO report includes, not just illegal aliens, but legal ones as well. But there's an even bigger problem here. Notice how he stopped the clip of my video and my criticism right here. 10% of those deported each year are legal permanent residents. Well, let's go take a look and see what happens when we let the clip play just a little bit longer. The other point when it comes to this document is that these numbers are not for homicides committed in 2017. Notice how one side shows charges and the other side shows convictions. Notice the large disparities in the numbers. Those conviction numbers reflect people who ICE took custody of after they have served their sentence so that they can be deported. This means their murders could have been committed decades ago. So as you can see, Vincent James decided to completely ignore this aspect of the argument and didn't address it at all in his video, even though it was one of the most important points about the report. If the report doesn't reflect homicides committed in that year, but rather the number of people ICE ERO took custody of for subsequent deportation, then the report becomes useless. But here's an additional fact about the report which I didn't even mention in the original video. Not only does the report not deal with homicides committed within that year, or deal with just illegal immigrants, but the homicides aren't just those committed in the United States, but other countries as well. For example, I was lucky enough to see a post from the official ICE Twitter account which said, ICE removes 2 Jamaican nationals wanted to face charges in their home country. And when we click the link, it takes us to the article which states, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement's ICE, Enforcement and Removal Operations, ERO, removed 2 Jamaican nationals Thursday, both wanted in their home country to face criminal charges. So as you can see, you have a case of 2 Jamaican illegal immigrants wanted for a murder charge in Jamaica in 2011, but were deported in 2019. Cases like these occur all the time. So when ICE uses the term criminal aliens and lists the number of crimes in the reports, it also includes crimes that were committed in another country. In fact, when we go to the US Customs and Border Patrol, CPB website, we can see this is the same definition of criminal aliens they use as well, stating, criminal aliens refers to aliens who have been convicted of crime, whether in the United States or abroad, so long as the conviction is for conduct which is deemed criminal by the United States. So even though the report doesn't apply just to illegal aliens, involves homicides that were committed many years ago, and counts homicides that were committed in other countries, I figured, let's just for fun pretend 100% of the 1886 murders were committed by illegal aliens and were committed in the year 2017, and crunch some numbers. Well, first we would have to look up the number of murders in the US for 2017. According to the FBI, it's 17,284. Now, this 1886 number is obviously for those who were either charged or convicted, so we need to compare this number to the total number of murders where arrests, charges, convictions were made, which is called the clearance rate. So if we look up the clearance rate for homicides in the year 2017, we get 61.6%. So if we take 61.6% of 17,284, we get 10,647. Now, if we go to the FBI website and look at the murder by race, we can see we have a total number of murders where the race of the suspect is known at 9,468. That's about 90% of the murders where we know the race of the suspect. Now, as you saw in the Vincent James video, he claims that most of the illegal aliens are Hispanic, and he's right about that. So let's scroll over to the number of total homicides by Hispanics in the FBI report. And as you can see, there are 1,462 murders committed by Hispanics/Latinos. So already the 1886 number is higher. Now, to be fair, not all illegal immigrants are Hispanic. The next biggest group are Asians. So let's add all the Asian murders on top of the Hispanic ones. As you can see, the total number of murders committed by Asians is 127. So if we add 127 to 1,462, we get 1,589, which is still about 297 short of the 1886 number. Now, to be fair, again, when it comes to the Hispanic number of murders in the FBI report, the total of the race known is only 66% of the total clearance rate for murder. So I'll be extremely generous, and let's boost the numbers and assume a proportional rate and add an extra 50% to the Hispanic number. In this case, we will ignore the Asian number because the number is relatively small anyway, and it's part of the other side of the FBI murder graph, which has a 90% total versus the 66% total for the Hispanic versus non-Hispanic classification. So this would be the most generous interpretation for Vincent James's argument. So if we increase the Hispanic population by 50%, we get 2,193 murders. So we did it. We finally passed the 1886 number. But there's a problem. These FBI numbers reflect murders in the US committed by everyone. That means US citizens and non-citizens alike. Now, if we look at the size of the legal Hispanic population in the United States, you see there's a total of 59 million Hispanics. Subtract from that number the number of illegal alien Hispanics at about 8 million, and we have a legal Hispanic population of about 51 million. Now, if we subtract the 2,193 murders we referenced earlier from the 1886 in the ICE ERO report, we get a leftover number of 307 murders. This would mean a population of 51 million Hispanics are responsible for just 307 murders in a given year. To put that into per capita numbers, we take 307 divided by the legal Hispanic population of 51 million, and then we multiply by 100,000 to get us a murder per capita rate for legal Hispanics of 0.6 per 100,000. Now, if that was the case, that would mean legal Hispanics were the most law-abiding demographic in the United States. It would mean that the average American is 8 times more likely to murder than Hispanics. It would mean that Hispanics would have an even lower homicide rate than Asians. It means that if legal Hispanics were their own country, they would be safer than virtually every country on the face of the earth other than Japan and Indonesia for their size. And given that data actually supports that second-generation immigrants commit more crime than first-generation immigrants, it just defies reality. So then he goes on to talk about student visas and how most of them are from Asian countries, and tries to imply that I was arguing that student visa holders were responsible for at least a somewhat significant portion of non-citizen murders. But I never said such a thing. All I did was mention what the definition of criminal alien was, which includes all those groups. But while we're on the topic of legal immigrants, let's look at legal permanent residents. According to the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Immigration Statistics, there are about 13.2 million legal permanent residents, also known as green card holders, in the United States. That's almost 6 times higher than the 2.3 million lawful temporary residents in this country, a subset of which Vincent James decided to reference earlier. Anyways, of these roughly 13.2 million legal permanent residents, the biggest portion of them come from Mexico, with almost 3.3 million. You can also see other groups like 480,000 from the Dominican Republic, 420,000 from Cuba, 320,000 from El Salvador, 490,000 from Haiti and Jamaica, 410,000 from Colombia and Guatemala, and over 4 million others. But Vincent James doesn't decide to tell you about that and instead chooses to mislead his viewers with a point about Asian tourists and students. And most federal prisoner sentences have to do with immigration crime. So of course illegal immigrants who break immigration law are going to be disproportionately represented.
Now, this is a statement that I believe either got from the Washington Post fact check or the Associated Press fact check. Either way, it's a statement that has been repeatedly shot down by both the CIS and Chris Kobach, referencing the CIS data in his debate with Bret Stephens and, of course, many other immigration think tanks.
My source is literally shown at the bottom of the graph that I showed, which says Bureau of Justice Statistics. Now, he seems to say this point isn't true and that it's been shot down. Well, let's look at the source that I cited from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. If we scroll down, we see there were 81,881 federal immigration arrests made in 2014, 1/2 of all federal arrests. Now, I'm going to give some credit to Vincent James because this next point he makes is actually true. Let's take a look.
Some analysts charge, like Nuance Bro, that the reason there are so many aliens in federal custody is that they are there for primarily immigration-related offenses. This is certainly true, as about 29% of aliens in BOP custody have committed immigration offenses, such as illegal re-entry after removal, but most of the aliens are incarcerated because of other federal crimes they committed. According to the report, 46% of these aliens committed drug trafficking, other drug-related offenses, which is the largest crime category committed by aliens in BOP custody. The remaining 25% committed a variety of other criminal offenses, including fraud, weapons charges, racketeering, and sexual crimes. Clearly, the large population of aliens in BOP custody cannot simply be explained away by immigration crimes, like Nuance Bro likes to tell you.
So as you saw in the paragraph he quoted, it conceded the point that I was making. It said with respect to immigration crimes making up a large portion of the federal inmate population, that this is certainly true. However, it also says that crimes like drug trafficking make up a bigger portion of those sentenced and that the disparity cannot be explained by immigration alone. This is also true. While 50% of arrests are for immigration crimes, these crimes don't receive sentences that are as lengthy as something like drug trafficking. So there will be more drug traffickers in prison because the sentences are longer than those for immigration crime. But no reasonable person denies that there are more foreigners per capita who engage in drug trafficking than citizens, because drug trafficking generally involves drugs starting outside the country and being trafficked into the country. Hence why it's also a federal crime. Nobody is claiming that illegals commit less crime on every front. For example, when it comes to Social Security fraud, illegals commit much more crime per capita than US citizens. But this video is less about the general argument about illegals and whether or not they commit more or less crime, but rather a look at the bad arguments and bad statistics people incorrectly use to bolster their own points. This video is an attempt to help people make their points more factual. Whether you're someone who supports more or less illegal immigration, it's important that we all care and pay attention to the facts and actually read the studies that we are citing and use them correctly.
This article cites many studies showing that illegal aliens commit a higher crime rate than legal residents, but this section in particular is the one that Nuance Bro had an issue with. Ron Martinelli writes, quoting the GAO data, quote, according to the FBI, 67,642 murders were committed in the U.S. from 2005 to 2008, and 115,717 from 2003 to 2009. The General Accounting Office documents that criminal immigrants committed 25,064 of these murders. Now, Nuance Pro expressed concern with these date ranges that Martinelli cites because if these date ranges are correctly cited from the GAO, then this means that criminal aliens committed anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 killings per year, which would be somewhere between 25 to 34 per 100,000 homicide rate, which is an astronomical rate like the likes that you would see in Jackson, Mississippi or Detroit, Michigan on a given year. Now, I don't know where Ron and Martinelli got the 2003 through 2009 dates for the 25,000 homicides.
Now, hold on, because this is very important. He just said he doesn't know where Ron Martinelli got the 2003 through 2009 date ranges. Now, this is still after he already had his conversation with Ron Martinelli, and he still doesn't know where he got the 2003 through 2009 date range. The funny thing is, I actually showed in my video where Ron Martinelli likely got both the 2005 through 2008 and 2003 through 2009 date ranges that he included in his article. So let's take a look at that clip. The 2005 through 2008 and 2003 through 2009 date ranges were referenced in the report as analyzed data from the U.S. Sentencing Commission on federal convictions of criminal aliens from fiscal years 2003 through 2009 and conviction data from 5 states, Arizona, California, Florida, New York, and Texas from fiscal years 2005 through 2008. That means those with conviction records and currently in the criminal justice system. But their actual crimes, as you saw from the earlier date range, was from 1955 through 2010. So if he actually watched my video, he would have seen me reference this, and he would have known exactly where Ron Martinelli got those numbers. Heck, all he had to do was literally search those date ranges in the study, and he would have found them. So either he's purposefully being dishonest here, or he didn't fully watch my video and didn't read the study. Anyways, he continues by having a phone conversation with Mr. Martinelli himself, where he says this.
Hi, this is Dr. Martinelli returning your call.
So I had one question about from the 2003 to 2009 date range. Were you saying in your article that the 25,000 homicides referenced in the GAO report by criminal aliens were committed in that date range of 2003 to 2009?
Oh boy, I don't have anything in front of me now. The only thing I can tell you is I got that information right out of the GAO. Yeah, so I have to go with that as the reference.
So even Martinelli himself says he got it out of the GAO. And as you saw, the date ranges for the homicides go back as far as 1955.
If you ask me, though, I will trust the nation's leading immigration think tank and criminologist who runs his own forensics firm over the Washington Post fact-checkers who couldn't even fact-check if the Covington Catholic kids truly assaulted a Native American Vietnam veteran or not.
This is a pure logical fallacy. He's engaging in an appeal to authority fallacy in order to make up for his lack of data. He can't refute the point I made or explain why his original assertion was correct, so he resorts to the logical fallacy of appealing to authority and then an ad hominem where he attacks the Washington Post, which I never cited as my source of information for the info regarding the GAO study. The info I showed was directly from the GAO study.
So once again, let's estimate low, just to humor him. Even if, let's take 70% off the top, even if it's 30% of these homicides were by illegal immigrants unlawfully here, and from the date ranges of 2003 through 2009, so we're taking 70% off the top, a very large portion. This would leave around 940 homicides per year, which would still be around 7.8 per 100,000, which is still much higher than the legal resident of the U.S.
So why is he sticking to the 2003 through 2009 date range even though we already showed that it's not the correct date range for the homicides shown. And on top of that, how did he manage to get 944 homicides per year given the calculation he just laid out? If we take just 30% of the homicide and use the years 2003 through 2009 like he said, you would get 1,074 per year. So I don't know how he got 944, but this calculation is still ridiculous because like we said earlier, the data goes back to 1955. Like I said in the previous video, the 90% after 1990 was for all 3 million offenses that were tracked. These are people who are currently in prison at the time the data was collected between 2003 through 2009. And as you can see, the top offenses for which people were incarcerated were immigration, drugs, traffic violations, obstruction of justice. Now, these crimes typically don't carry relatively long sentences compared to a murder conviction. With murder, you often get life in prison, which is likely why the report shows a date range going back as far as 1955. So it makes sense that 90% of the 3 million offenses occurred after 1990 because the sentences for most of the crimes listed are for relatively short periods of time. I can illustrate how ridiculous the notion is that 90% of the homicides happened after 1990 with this simple calculation. If we take 90% of the 25,064 homicides and then we divide by the number of years between 1990 and 2010, which is 21 years, you get 1,074. Now, if that's the case, that means between 1955 and 1990, which is a 35-year period, you only had 10% of the remaining 25,064 homicides, which is 2,506. If you divide that by 35 years, it gives you an annual homicide of 72. So if you want me to believe that in 1980, when there were 23,040 murders and we had the highest per capita murder rate in our history, that both illegal and legal immigrants were responsible for only 0.3% of the murders at a time when gangs like 18th Street, MS-13, Latin Kings, the Norteños, the Sureños, and many thousands of criminal Cuban immigrants that were released from prison by Fidel Castro and sent to the US in the Mariel boat lift, then I want some of the 1980s crack that you're smoking if you believe that. Now, to be fair, none of these calculations will be perfect given the nature of how the report was conducted. We know the population of both legal and illegal immigrants between 1955 and 2010 have changed and shifted multiple times. But still, take that 0.3% of homicides and double it, triple it, quadruple it, and it still makes no sense. The bottom line is you can't make a definitive or reasonable judgment either way about the illegal homicide rate based on this report, because there just isn't enough information about when these homicides were committed and how many were legal versus illegal aliens.
Of course, he also does not mention the other claims Ron Martinelli makes in the Hill article, like, for instance, quote, in California alone, over 2,400 illegal immigrants out of a total prison population of 130,000 are imprisoned in the state's prison system for the crime of homicide. Or, quote, in California, there are just over 92 illegal immigrants imprisoned for every 100,000 illegals as compared to 74 citizens and legal non-citizen immigrants. Or, quote, in New York, over 3 times as many illegal immigrants, or 169, are imprisoned for crimes per 100,000 as compared to only 48 citizens and legal non-citizen immigrants. But again, I digress.
So he cites these other various numbers from the Hill article in his video, which he criticizes me for not addressing. But the problem is with these claims is while the previous claims cited the GAO study, which we showed actually doesn't show what was claimed, for these claims there was no citation I could find anywhere. The author did not say where he got this data from, nor provided any links. I did my best to search for this information to see if I could find a source, but I found nothing. I don't even know how he could come across such a stat with respect to California, for example, since California does not release such information about illegal immigrants and their specific crimes. But we'll actually get back to one of these paragraphs in just a bit.
Nuance Bro then goes on to attempt to debunk the TDCJ statistics, saying that they are not accurate. Then he goes on to quote Alex Narasta, a Cato Institute neocon, pro-open borders advocate globalist.
So here Vincent James engages in yet another ad hominem attack. He can't attack the data, so he attacks the person presenting the data. He calls Narasta a neocon, but Narasta is an anti-war libertarian, which is quite the opposite of a neocon. Unfortunately, some people use this term neocon as a way to refer to someone's Jewish heritage, so I don't know if that's the case here, but Narasta certainly isn't a neocon when it comes to policy.
Alex Narasta is his source for determining the TDCJ numbers are not accurate.
So the TDCJ numbers are not accurate
Neocon, Cato Institute guy. Once again, even if we were to cut these numbers by 70% and say that only 30% is usable in this context of illegal alien homicides or manslaughter, we would still get a rate that is higher than legal residence. I mean, that's a fact.
So he doesn't attack the data that Naureste got directly from the Texas Department of Public Safety. He continues to attack Naureste as the source of the information, even though the source is actually Texas DPS. It's also kind of funny because remember those claims from the Hill article that Vincent James criticized me for not addressing? Well, ironically enough, it actually debunks his own point about illegal immigrants and crime in Texas when it says, only the states of Texas and Florida do illegal immigrants commit less crimes than their legal immigrant counterparts. Texas with 54.5 illegals imprisoned per 100,000 compared to 65 legal immigrants, and Florida with 55 illegals imprisoned compared to 68 legal immigrants. So which is it? Is the Hill article claim a lie, or is your interpretation of the TDCJ numbers incorrect? So anyways, he basically ends the video by saying it's getting too long, which is certainly understandable. But much like the first video I did, and now this response to his response video, I'd like to end on an area of agreement because I think Vincent James touches on a very important point here.
One thing is for sure, though, just as the ABC writer says, there is no national database that compares crimes committed by immigration status. I wish there was, and I hope this can change.
And this is absolutely true. There absolutely could and should be more comprehensive statistics when it comes to crime and immigration status. Texas, as I mentioned before, seems to be doing a great job at this, but is, to my knowledge, the only state in the country that keeps track of these sorts of things. We should all encourage more data to be provided and for more states and federal agencies to track these numbers so we can get a more realistic and accurate sense of what's going on. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry it's taken so long between my videos lately, but as you can imagine, some of these videos can be very numbers and research intensive, so please forgive me, but regular programming should be coming back soon. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell if you're about that nuance. Social media links are in the description box below, as well as merch. And I'll see you next time, bro.